So this is our time to give back to you, to give you the tools, to give you the time, to help you refocus your energies and your efforts. And I can't think of a better way than to have Jack Wiley kick us off as our keynote this morning. Thank you so much.
I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you today. The city of Las Vegas, what a wonderful city, and also what a high-performing team that you've assembled. And I'm just honored to be invited to speak with you today about some things that are near and dear to my heart. Do we have any firefighters represented? All right, I bring greetings from my son, who is a firefighter for the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, studying for his captain's test, by the way. And I'm just excited to talk about things that are really important to all of us. We're going to talk about what it is that employees most want from their work. We're also going to talk about why that is important, as if the definition to that answer wouldn't be sufficient unto itself. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we do more to make sure that employees are getting exactly what they want. I want you to think about something. Think about, for yourself, what is the most important thing you want from the city of Las Vegas as an employer. So the organization for which you work, what is the most important thing you want from the city of Las Vegas as an employer? And then I'm going to share with you in just a moment what people around the world have told me in answer to that question about what they most want. And it's rather simplifying to see that, in effect, there are 7 things that describe what employees most want. This is the question that I've been asking, interestingly enough, for about 25 years. I started out just asking this question of a representative sample of employees in the United States, and then I began expanding that to other countries and economies around the world, to the point where I got to be able to ask this question to a representative sample of employees in about 28 countries around the world, representing 80% of the world's gross domestic product. The point for bringing that up is simply that when I share these results with you, I'm sharing results with you that are fundamentally universal to employees worldwide in terms of what they want from the companies for which they work. My database is pretty extensive, as I've just indicated, but very importantly, it covers all major industry groups, all generational types, all job types, and so we can truly be confident about what employees most want from the organizations for which they work. Does anyone want to share with me what's most important to you? What is the thing that you most want from the city of Las Vegas? Anybody want to share their answer? Yes? Paycheck. All right, you want to be paid. You want to be paid fairly for the contributions you make, what you bring in terms of your talents, skills, and abilities. That's the quid pro quo. We work in exchange for what we bring to that organization. Thank you. Yes? All right, better communication within the department. You want to understand where your department is headed, where the city government is headed, and how your role fits into that. All right, very good. Anyone else? I'm sure there's some other ideas. Yes? Stability. All right. We want to make sure that we've got a job, that we can meet the demands of our family budget, that we can put a roof over our heads, food on the table for our family, we can plan our futures financially, and to be working for a stable organization. Thank you. Other ideas? I think I saw another hand. Yes? All right, to succeed. All right, we want to succeed as individuals because we like being on a winning team, and we want to succeed with an organization that's headed in a direction that makes sense. Very good. Any other ideas? Yes? Purpose. So, which makes sense in relation to the values conference that you have. What is our purpose as an organization? What are we trying to achieve? And how does that translate down to the description for my job and the expectations that my managers have of me? All right, other ideas? Yes? Professional development. We want to continue to grow and to develop. Many of us do. Want to continue to grow and develop, have an opportunity to expand our skills, try new things, and possibly along the way earn more money doing it as we work up that chain of command, so to speak. All right, any other ideas? Yes? To feel valued. All right, this gets to the notion of being recognized, appreciated, feeling valued, and a lot of times that doesn't really cost anything. It's just Thank you. Pat on the back, attaboy, attagirl. Very good. Any other ideas? Yes?
I want the city to provide us with the resources to provide the community the level of service we deserve.
All right.
Carry out.
All right. So the resources necessary to accomplish our purpose, to provide the services to the community we serve in the way we ought to be able to do that. Very good. Any other thoughts or ideas? I think I can go home now because the group already knows the answers. Have you read my book? Probably not, but I hope that you will. I want to share with you, in a way, summarizing what you've already provided about what it is that employees have told me they most want from the organizations for which they work. Here they are. There are 7 things, universal, regardless of job type, regardless of industry, regardless of country, regardless of level within the organization. This is what employees most want. It forms the acronym RESPECT, not surprisingly. There are 7 things, and here they are. Number 1, people want to be recognized. 20% of all of the responses we got to the question of what do you most want from the organization for which you work is recognition. When people talk about recognition, they're not talking about the pocketbook. They're talking about the attaboy, attagirl, feeling valued, feeling appreciated. Number 2, they want to do work that's exciting, where they're delivering a value to their customer, to their organization. The kind of work that causes us to jump out of bed in the morning, to be excited about the actual content of the work. Number 3, an answer you already provided, security. That is to be able to meet our weekly, our monthly obligations, to be able to support our families in a way that would be consistent with our wishes. Number 4, and the biggest slice of the pie, pay. But when people said that pay was the most important thing they wanted, they always qualified that by saying, I want the pay that I receive to be fair in relation to the contribution that I'm making. The 5th item, education and career growth. Normally we would call this career development, but I needed another E to form the acronym RESPECT, so I called it education and career growth. But the idea is getting better at what we do, learning more, being able to develop new skills. The 6th thing that people said had to do with the work environment. I call it positive working conditions. Again, I needed the C, so I'm calling this conditions. There are 2 parts of it though. One part is that it relates to a physical environment where if we work in an office, it's reasonably well organized. Heating and ventilation is what you would expect it to be. If we work in the field, safety procedures are followed and honored. But that's actually the smallest part of positive working conditions. The biggest part of positive working conditions has more to do with freedom from discrimination, from bias, having a positive social vibe where I work, where there's a spirit of teamwork, cooperation, and the people that I work with are pulling together to accomplish our purpose. And then finally, the T stands for truth. I want to be told the truth about the direction this organization is headed, what my role is in that organization, and how my performance is perceived. RESPECT. In fact, of all of the written responses we received to this open-ended question, about 98% of what we saw, analyzed, and categorized falls into these 7 elements of what employees most want. So you might be asking, why should we care? It might be interesting for university professors to be summarizing global data about what employees most want, but why should we care? I want to answer that question, but before I do so, I want to build just a little bit on this fundamental understanding of what employees value in their organizational employment relationship. So recognition, as I've already said, is basically a pat on the back, psychological recognition. This is how employees described it in their own terms. These are actually written comments to that open-ended question. People want to be appreciated. They want to be recognized. They want to be valued. When we talk about recognition, interestingly enough, and I know that the City of Las Vegas regularly conducts employee surveys, no doubt the survey contains items that pertain to recognition. When people feel valued, these are their scores in terms of evaluating their direct line manager. So direct line managers, if you want to be regarded as an effective direct line manager by your employees, one of the things that you can do is to make sure that they feel appreciated. Because when they do, employees evaluate their direct line managers in very favorable terms. For example, over 70% would say my direct line manager is effective in managing our tasks, in managing the people, in keeping commitments. And 3 out of 5 would even say that my direct line manager is an outstanding leader. That's when they feel valued for the contribution they're making. So what do you suppose these bar charts look like when people don't feel valued, when they don't feel appreciated, when they don't feel recognized, when no one says thank you for the extra effort you're putting in to get the job done? All right, about half. Here's what it looks like. Drops off by 2/3. All right, and we have already identified recognition as one of the things that people most want, but it also impacts how people perceive the quality of their leadership, the quality of their managers. All right? Exciting work, a job that's interesting, challenging, fun to do. People identified this in their own terms in the following way. Basically, what they're saying is, I want the job I do to match well with the skills and abilities that I have, for it to provide me with a sense of personal accomplishment, for me to feel excited about what it is that I actually do and how I spend my day. We took a look at things that contribute to this sense of excitement. We varied some job conditions, and we looked at things like, are people getting cross-trained? Because when they're in a learning environment and they're getting cross-trained, they feel like their work is more exciting. We took a look at whether or not people work in an R&D type of environment where there's emphasis on doing new things, more cutting edge, more innovation. When they do, they're more excited about their work. We even took a look at whether or not people work remotely. This is a proxy, if you will, for your manager trusting you to get the job done without closely supervising your work. When people have that sense of autonomy, they're more excited about their work. All right, these are all conditions that contribute to a sense of feeling excited about the work. And I'm sure you could think of examples that would pertain to your job as well. Security. I've been conducting employee opinion surveys for many years. Probably about 1985, we noticed that organizations didn't like to ask questions about job security anymore because they weren't wanting to suggest that they could provide job security. The social contract had changed, organizations would downsize, jobs would be cut, organizations would be slashed to just a fraction of their former self, and they didn't want to measure employee attitudes about job security. But guess what? Employees still considered it to be, as you've already pointed out, extremely important. This is what people had to say about the notion of job security. They want a steady job, they want stability in the organization, and frankly, they want to be on a team that is headed in a positive direction. They want to be on a winning team where there's going to be opportunity for more exciting work, for growth and development, and these other things that follow along. Well, what causes employees to feel as if they're working for an organization that is stable, in which they can have confidence about the future and their job in that organization? We actually took a look at this. And what we noticed was that when we consider the aspects of the work environment, the conditions of the work environment that really contribute to employees feeling as if they have secure jobs, these are the things that emerged. And when we took a look at this list of 10 things, the work being more excited, satisfied with recognition, so on and so forth, down that list of 10 things, we realized that this was really a statement about leadership. In fact, this fit very closely with the leadership theory that identified there are 3 things that cause employees to believe that their leaders are trustworthy. One is, are they competent? Number two, do they operate with a sense of benevolence toward employees? That is, they take into consideration the employee point of view. And number three, are they ethical? So when leaders are competent, when they display competence, when they display a spirit of benevolence, when they clearly operate within an ethical framework that everyone can identify and support, employees are much more likely to say, in fact, that they have secure jobs because they know the direction the company is headed, the organization is headed, they know their role in it, and they know what the organization is trying to achieve. What do you suppose? Of course, I'm not talking about City of Las Vegas actual survey results, but what do you suppose is the level of favorability on these 10 drivers of employment security, of job security, that employees themselves say are important to their sense of security? What do you suppose the level of favorability? It can range from 0 to 100%. What do you suppose the level of favorability is on these 10 factors that contribute to the spirit of job security? Anybody want to venture a guess? Did I hear 80? 70? We're headed in the right direction, by the way. 37? All right, that's a very specific number. And we'll go with that. Here it is. For the individual 10 factors that contribute to the spirit of job security, as well as how they roll up into these 3 leadership attributes, what this tells me, in each case, averaging less than 50%, so only 1 out of every 2 employees could, in effect, see their leaders worldwide, globally, as operating in a way that demonstrates this competence, this spirit of benevolence, and this sense of operating within an ethical framework. What it tells me, of course, as someone who studies these things, is that there's a lot of runway for improvement on these dimensions. But these are the very kinds of factors that contribute to that important sense of job security. Well, let's go to pay. This was the biggest slice of the pie, and I would argue the only one, in effect, that really, truly has a financial cost to it. All right, pay. But what people were saying, as I've already indicated, had more to do with how pay is distributed. Is it fair? Is it equivalent to the knowledge, skills, and abilities that I bring? Is there a spirit of equity here in terms of how I'm compensated? I was in a very fortunate position to be able to look at this in a way that I have not seen anyone else do, and that is to look at it from the standpoint of fair pay and actually compare compensation levels to the sense in which people felt that they were paid fairly. I was able to examine 4 things that influence whether or not people feel that they are paid fairly. I was able to look at their actual pay level. Did they know how their compensation was determined? Did they know how to maximize their compensation? And do they believe they work in an environment where those people who are the higher performers are the ones who are going to get the bigger raises, a pay-for-performance type of environment? This is what I found. In terms of explaining fair pay, the actual pay level only accounted for 10% of that rating. On the other hand, people believing pay is related to performance, knowing how to maximize their compensation, and understanding how their pay is determined accounted for 90% of their rating of fair pay. So what does that tell us? It tells us in academic terms that people are very concerned about justice. They're very concerned about how pay decisions are made and understanding what they can do to maximize their compensation. It's not so much about the actual pay level, although all of us would like to make more money, no doubt, but it's about our ratings of fair pay have to do with how pay decisions are made. All right, let's go to that second E, education and career growth. People had this to say. They want to be able to develop their skills, have some opportunities to move up in their career. So when we think about education and career growth, and of course I look out over this room, we've got a nice mix of the different age groups. I happen to be not a surprise to you, I'm in the baby boomer group. but some of you are Generation X, some of you are millennials. A lot is said about millennials and the challenges associated with managing millennials. Let's take a look at the attitudes of 3 different age groups in terms of opportunities for career development. All right? Surprisingly, when we talk about the opportunity for growth and development, millennials are the most favorable. It's actually the baby boomers who seem to be the least favorable. That could be because they don't have quite the same runway. But a lot of times the popular press gets very excited about how we have to treat the millennial age group differently. But fundamentally what I found is they want to be part of a successful organization. They want to grow and develop their skills. They want to make a contribution and be paid fairly for the contribution they're made, just like people in the other age groups. So when you boil it down to the essence, there's very little difference in terms of some of those supposed differences in the age groups. All right, let's get to our final element, truth. What people had to say here, before we do that, let's get to conditions. That positive working conditions, a fairly big category, and as I mentioned, it has 2 things associated with it. Safety and physical work environment, but most importantly, the social working conditions. Do I work in a situation where I can bring forward a concern that I might have? Is there freedom from discrimination? Are people treated in a fair way within the framework of a team? When we looked at these results on a global basis, we actually found that for the most part, people could rate their physical working conditions just a little more favorably than their social working conditions. But again, whether or not people believe they work in a team that has a positive vibe is actually more important to them than the physical working conditions itself. And so managers and organizations that put an emphasis on the kinds of policies that affect this sense of fairness they're operating in a way that has a huge impact on whether or not employees are getting what they want from the organization for which they work. All right, finally, let's get to truth. Frank, honest, and transparent leaders is what people want. This is how they express this in their own terms. Now, I want to ask you another question. There's an item in a survey that I often include when I design surveys for organizations. The item reads as follows. Where I work, when senior management says something, you can believe it's true. All right, we call that a credibility question. When senior management says something, you can believe it's true. And people could answer on a 5-point scale. Strongly agree, agree, neither agree nor disagree, disagree, strongly, disagree. What % of employees worldwide, so I'm not talking about City of Las Vegas results, but what % of employees worldwide would agree or strongly agree with that statement? When senior management says something, you can believe it's true. 37%. Hey, I love that consistency. We call that reliability in measurement. All right. Do you suppose that there is a difference between how people in different jobs would rate that question or answer that question? All right. Which job group would answer most favorably? Senior managers? All right, let's take a look. "37% represents probably the biggest collection of workers in most organizations. These are people who are actually getting the work done, delivering the product, delivering the service. Interestingly enough, how many groups break 50%? 2, 1 barely, mid-level managers. But interestingly, even senior level managers, only 3 out of 4 would say yes. When senior management says something, you can believe it's true. We might call that honesty in reporting in some respects. All right. So that's a framework. It's collected from a representative sample of employees worldwide. I've been doing this for several years. We keep testing the model, and we keep getting the same results. So this is interesting for academics, but why should we, it gets us to that very famous formula in social science research, which is called SW squared C. Anybody know what that formula stands for? SW squared C stands for so what and who cares, all right? Why should we care about this? It's one thing to know that people want RESPECT, but so what and who cares? Why does it matter? Yes?
I think when you can accelerate the trust factor, you can also accelerate performance and output.
All right, very good. In fact, I'm going to build on that. The comment was when you can accelerate the trust factor, you can accelerate output and performance. So let's actually test that. We can do that. We have data, and I'm going to put that in the framework of a balanced scorecard. A balanced scorecard is a management technique where organizations simply translate their strategy into actions. It really forces them to hypothesize, how are we going to achieve success? What is the way in which we're going to manage our employees through the processes we follow to impact our customer base? In this case, perhaps it's our citizens. How are we going to get high citizen satisfaction ratings and operate financially in a way that allows us to meet our budget, not overspend? All right, so for the city of Las Vegas, it might operate some way like that. For a profit-seeking organization, of course, they would want to be delivering dollars to the bottom line. But a balanced scorecard does just that. It causes us to identify what are the measures that we would put in place to tell us whether or not we're on the right track. Because actually, at the end of a year, either we've met our budget, we've underspent, or we've overspent. But once that's happened, we can't do anything about it. We're looking at performance in a rear view mirror, so to speak. The same thing would be for profit-seeking organizations. That's why they adopt a scorecard that tells them whether or not they're headed in the right direction on the basis of their belief that these different measures of importance are all interrelated. So let's take a look at the people outcome, which is generally the first quadrant in the balanced scorecard, employee engagement. Employee engagement is an important term. It describes the extent to which people are motivated to perform their jobs, apply discretionary effort in the achievement, go the extra mile, if you will. All right, so employees whose most important want is fulfilled, this is their employee engagement level on a traditional measure of employee engagement. Do I have pride in the organization? Am I satisfied in an overall sense as an employee in this organization? Would I recommend this organization as a place to work? And am I committed to staying with this organization and contributing to its success? This is what happens when employees' most important want is satisfied. What happens when their most important want isn't fulfilled? What do you think their employee engagement level would be? 37%. Why did I bother to ask? Boy, this group catches on fast. So, if we believe employee engagement is important, because after all, it's about motivation, it's about commitment, it's about willingness to apply extra effort, then what we're talking about matters. But let's go to performance confidence. Performance confidence is one of those things that gets to whether or not I believe my organization is effective at what we do. We've found over the last 20 years that employees are extremely well informed. If we ask them questions about how well their organization is operating, not only will they tell us the truth, but they'll also identify for us what the organization needs to do better or differently to achieve a higher level of success. So performance confidence is extremely important. When I think about performance confidence, I'm thinking about the extent to which employees believe that what they're putting out is of high quality, it's innovative, it's very competitive, and it positions the organization to have an outstanding future. Here's what happens when employees state that their most important want is fulfilled. They are highly confident of the organization for which they work and its future. Not 37%, but it's much lower when their most important want isn't fulfilled. And of all of the concepts that I've looked at that actually relate to organizational success and predict organizational success, whether or not employees are confident in their organization is the single most potent, robust predictor of actual organizational success. Of anything that you can measure in an employee survey, performance confidence is by far the best predictor of actual success. So if we can operate in a way that causes our employees to feel confident about the future because we're putting out high quality products that are innovative, then we've got a formula that's going to work in terms of long-term success. Linkage research. Betsy mentioned the fact that I've been involved in linkage research. It's an opportunity for us to link how employees feel about their work environment to actual measures of success. Are our customer satisfaction ratings higher? Is our financial performance better? Again, we're looking at all of these things to answer the question, why should we care about RESPECT? So let's take a look at actual linkage research data. This comes from over 18 countries, including all major industry groups, representing about 22% of the Fortune 500. And these are large organizations whose data I was able to analyze. So let's look at customer satisfaction. You mentioned your citizen values and citizen service satisfaction results. This takes a look at customer satisfaction as measured by the American Customer Satisfaction Index. Organizations who are in the top 25% on providing their employees with respect score at 80 or above. Organizations that are in the bottom of 25% score at 74.3. Now, without some calibration, that may not make a whole lot of sense. Here's the calibration. If your organization scores 80 or above on the American Customer Satisfaction Index, you are in the elite group of organizations in terms of providing customer service and satisfaction. These are the organizations that are just knocking home runs about every time to bat. These are the organizations whose customers are going to come back, they're going to buy more, and they're going to recommend that others buy more as well. On the other hand, if you're in the category of 75 or below, and you're the CEO of that organization, you probably ought to be looking for another job because your customers are leaving, your market share is declining, and as soon as your customers have a chance to replace you with another service, they're going to do it. They have no commitment, no loyalty to stay with you as a provider of that service. All right? So respect directly relates to whether or not employees are delivering the customer service that the customers expect and want. Now let's take a look at some financial measures. Again, in the sense of the city of Las Vegas, you might be looking at the extent to which we hit our budget numbers. In the sense of Fortune 500 companies, they're going to be taking a look at things like operating margin. Those organizations in the top 25%, they're dropping about 14 cents to the dollar to the bottom line. Those in the bottom 25% on respect, considerably less, about half, a little bit more than half as much. And the same would be true for total shareholder return. We looked at this over a 3-year period of time, and what you can see is that organizations that operate in a way that provide a respectful work environment are delivering considerably more shareholder return. In fact, the difference between the two groups, the top 25%, the bottom 25%, is about 23 percentage points on total shareholder return. We want to have our money invested in those organizations that are providing their employees with a respectful work environment. So, what we've tried to do is to not only provide you with a framework for how we want to manage the organization in terms of creating a respectful work environment, but we've also talked about, with real data, not just someone's notion of how this works, but with real data, why that's important to do. So how would we go about doing it? Well, I have a lot of students who are getting ready to go out into the world of work, and they're getting opportunities to go on job interviews. And when they do, I ask them some questions. Have you assessed the organization, the prospective employer, along the following dimensions? Do they have a recognition program that ensures that people are appreciated and thanked for their work? Do you actually know what the job is that you're going to be doing so that you can determine whether or not that's suited to your jobs, to your skills and abilities? Is there a sense of providing job security for employees who are getting the job done? Of course, in all organizations, there are some who aren't getting the job done. We're not talking about removing people who aren't contributing from the payrolls, but we're talking about a sense of providing job security for those who are getting the job done. Do you know how pay is determined and how you would maximize your compensation at this organization? Is there the opportunity for career growth, and have they identified a path by which you could develop? Have you investigated the safety records and the diversity and inclusion policies to get a sense of how positive the working conditions would be? And then finally, can you review the public statements with leaders about the performance of the organization and compare that with the reality to see whether or not the truth is being told? That's about how you would assess respect. But how would you build respect within an organization? Well, one of the things that we can do in recognition, which, and it sounds like you're doing a terrific job with this already, is closing the gap between when someone does well and when they receive that recognition. That really reinforces the sense of being appreciated for the contribution that's being made. We can expand employee skills by providing more work variety. We saw this when we looked at exciting work. One of the things that really contributes to a spirit of exciting work is learning how to do other jobs, being cross-trained, which of course, by the way, makes the organization more capable of responding to special circumstances. In the area of security, one of the things that we can do is to help people develop, so whether or not their next job is with us or with another organization, along the line we've prepared them to be effective contributors, and they're developing and growing in their skill base. In the area of pay, one of the things that organizations can do is to create an annual compensation review that provides employees with an understanding of everything that goes into their compensation. This is inclusive of benefits, other kinds of ways in which employees are supported, whether it be the policies that you have for ongoing education or what have you. Most employees are extremely surprised when they see all of the spend that goes into their annual compensation that doesn't show up necessarily solely in their paycheck. Education and career growth, we've already mentioned this. Cross-training employees is a very effective way of accomplishing that. Conditions. We can create positive working conditions by being very clear about what's expected, who's doing what, and building that sense of team spirit so that the focus is really on the positive and the uplifting. And finally, telling the truth. It's what we need to do no matter what. Employees are too smart. They're going to see through the spin. They're going to see through when things aren't what they really are, and it always undermines our credibility. So when we think about building respect, some of the things that we can do, you might refer to as easily accomplished. But that's what it takes to build the kind of organization that where employees are excited about coming to work, and once they're there, they're excited about staying, and it positions them to deliver the product and service that the organization needs them to deliver. RESPECT. You've been a very kind audience, very participative audience, a very accurate audience, and I thank you for your very kind attention.
Got some questions? Oh, please, this group's not shy.
It's not always 37%, no.
What organization applying these principles had the biggest turnaround in your experience?
Biggest turnaround. So the question has to do with what organization has had the biggest turnaround. Well, for sake of confidentiality, I won't mention names, but typically it involves a change at the very top of the organization, where let's say the exiting CEO or top leader of the organization, whatever role they might have in terms of how it's described on the organizational chart, leaves. There's an understanding that performance hasn't been what it should have been, and the new CEO, he or she brings in a different mentality about the management of the workforce. I know that sounds simplistic, but in a way that explains an awful lot. I've seen organizations, and I'm sure you can imagine organizations where maybe their performance was okay, it was mediocre, it certainly wasn't setting any trends, but the board of directors or whatever the governing institution was that was eventually responsible for that, they weren't satisfied with that performance. Sometimes you can obviously bring someone in from inside the organization. Sometimes you have to go out to get that new type of leadership mentality or paradigm for how you're going to operate. But it's almost always consistent with an understanding that the only way we're going to succeed in accomplishing what we're here to accomplish is by having a workforce that's excited about coming to work, and once they're there, they're excited about staying and getting the job done. Yes?
How would you correlate the respect concept with a values-based ethical culture approach to doing a mission?
Right. So the question is about how would we relate the respect concept with the values-based organizational approach. I think it actually relates extremely well. If you think about respect, it's picking up the notion that we need to be clear about what our purpose is. It's picking up the notion that we need to treat each other in an ethical and honest fashion. It picks up the notion that we need to be compensated fairly for the contribution that we're making. And at the end of the day, and regardless of whether you're a religious person or a non-religious person, or regardless of what your religious faith might be, the essence of respect is doing unto others what you would have them do unto you. And that's actually a major tenet of every major religious thought that exists in the world today. So I think it is almost a hand-in-glove fit when you talk about values-based organizations that are treating employees respectfully and operating in the environment in which they operate in a highly ethical manner. So I see a hand-in-glove fit. Thank you. Right, right. So unfortunately, all of us have probably experienced a coworker that might have taken an attitude of nonchalance or lack of initiative or lack of appreciation for who the customer is. And how does this framework fit within a governmental setting? Well, interestingly enough, a very big portion of my sample was from government employees, all elements of government. So local, state, federal, including the military services. That represents a very big chunk in all of the economies that I surveyed who are part of this. Now, the balanced scorecard framework would have to be changed because you're not a profit-seeking organization, at least I don't think you are. So that's why I was bringing in notions of meeting the budget, customer satisfaction. You're bringing in notions of our citizens, are they satisfied with the product and service? In a way, it gets back to, are you going to hire people and keep people and reward people who have a service mentality? And presumably you are. And I think that's how you reinforce this. And when people aren't delivering in that way, presumably they're receiving performance feedback about that. And if there's not an opportunity for them to change, or if they don't take the opportunity to change, their career stalls or they're asked to leave. But the framework applies. In fact, government employees are a very big portion of this sample. Again, thank you very much. I really appreciate your kind attention.